So box.
Hi, my name is Rochelle, and you're watching or listening to Box F1 Pod. Welcome to the Qatar Grand Prix race recap episode. Overall, incredibly boring race. Boring weekend, boring race. But what it has done for the Drivers' Championship. I cannot believe we are down to the wire to the very last race with 3 possible winners. Some a little less than others. That list, another list. But the order has changed since last week, which is crazy. So while we had some superb drives this weekend and some wonderful performances and some life-changing performances, really, we still do not know who is going to win it all. Will it be Lando? Will it be Oscar? Will it be Max? It could be anyone. At this point, it's looking a lot less likely that it's Oscar, but hey, we've seen some crazy shit happen this season, so literally, you never know. You actually do not know. We do not know. Anything could happen. Sort of. We're going to talk about it all. We're going to talk about the race. We're going to talk about the insane strategy decisions that McLaren made. I don't even know how this team is a constructor winning team. It was a fluke. They accidentally ended up with a fabulous car and cannot follow through with the strategy side of things. Good car, great drivers, terrible strategy. And it's really situations like this that demonstrate how much of a team sport F1 is. Every portion is integral to the overall success of the team. Truly. Well and truly. But we're going to talk about it all. But first, let's kick things off with the digital warm-up. Lap 1. Lap 1, F1 news. First things first, Adrien Newey has been announced as Aston Martin's team principal for next year. I don't know how common it is to make the car designer. Is he chief engineer? To make someone in his position a team principal, although in theory, those with an engineering background, I don't know, because Matteo Binotto had an engineering background and he was not a great people leader, which is also important. Understanding the car and being good with people and good at leading people they're both important. Adrien Newey definitely has the leading people in this way. Obviously he's led an engineering, Matteo Binotto's led an engineering team. Adrien Newey's led engineering teams. Will that translate to a team principal role? I don't know. Matteo Binotto's the only example I can think of that I'm aware of. I'm sure there's been more, but I'm sure there are people who have an engineering background who also have the people skills to lead a team. And Adrien Newey could be that person. This could be an insane move by Aston Martin, and it could be the thing that takes them over to the top. We won't know until we see, but that is some exciting news to look forward to for next year to see how Adrien Newey runs a team. In addition to being insane at designing cars. It wouldn't be fair if you could do both. But anyway, TBD on that. Hello. Okay, if you're watching, you'll see I'm wearing a different outfit. I am coming to you live with breaking news. It's not actually breaking. It's been a full day. But Red Bull officially announced that they are replacing Yuki Tsunoda for next year. He's being replaced with dun-dun-dun. That's not a drum. What is the audio? What? A drum beat? Okay, anyway, he's being replaced with Isaac Hadjar, which has been the rumor for ever, basically since Isaac performed well one time. Everyone's like, he's replacing him. And he is in fact replacing him. I'm so nervous because do I think Isaac deserves this? 100%. I think Isaac has had a great rookie season. I think he's had some great performances. And I think he deserves to be recognized by a big team. Am I terrified with every fiber of my being about what will happen to Isaac's career? Isaac's soul, Isaac's being. If he takes the second Red Bull seat, we've seen bigger men fall. It has destroyed so many people and so many careers. It has made great careers as well. That's like saying it destroyed careers is not entirely fair. It didn't destroy like Pierre's career or Alex's career, but I do think it was a little soul destroying and crushing to be in that position. And I don't want that for little baby Isaac Hadjar. I just don't. And I think he should have said no with his full chest, because Racing Bulls is clearly a nice place to be. It's not a bad place to be. People perform well there. Yuki performed really well there. Then he came to Red Bull and he was not great. Liam Lawson was terrible at Red Bull. Then he came to Racing Bulls and look at him. Now he's doing pretty well. Like, it's such a scary move. At the same time, I can't see how he would have said no. Like, he wasn't going to be like, no, I'll stay where I am. Thank you. I don't know if Helmut Marko would have accepted that, but I'm also hoping that maybe the glimmer of hope here is that it's in a new era with the new regulations, and that perhaps it won't be as a steep of a climb for him as for other drivers, because the car is still being designed and like evolving, and it won't necessarily be like hard fixed to Max's style yet. So there's a chance that he will have a better time there. And again, none of this is about his talent or his skills or anything. So just like fingers crossed, praying with all I have that Isaac has a good season next year, and this isn't the last of him. He's not going to get demoted in halfway through a race. They're like, just kidding, off you go. Anyway, he over at Racing Bulls, Liam Lawson's new teammate will be a kid named Arvid Lindblad, who is currently in F2. I think he finished fourth. In F2, he also went through F3, but he is coming into the Racing Bull seat with some good experience under his belt, but not necessarily like championship wins. He is 18 years old. What are we, like F1 high school now? He is an adorable kid, cutie patootie. That's like pretty much all I know about him is his face. I honestly think he's a Bridgerton casting director's dream, judging by face alone. But let's see what he does with a helmet on. Just kidding. Okay, but what all of this ultimately means is that Yuki has no seat for next year. And that makes me really, really sad. I saw a rumor the other day that he might be going into IndyCar, and I just didn't want to believe it. But alas, that might be where he's headed. And if so, I'm like happy he's going to continue with the racing career. That Honda backing will continue to fund a career that I do think he deserves. I don't think his last few races at Red Bull should define him as a driver. I think he's come so far and he's tried so hard and he's evolved and grown so much as a driver, and he should be more judged by his Racing Bulls time at Racing Bulls this year versus his time at Red Bull. It's rough. It's rough. I really wish there was a seat for him in F1. I really don't want to lose Yuki Tsunoda, but looks like we don't know what's going to happen with that. The next thing in the F1 news section is really a rumor, and that is that Fernando Alonso is potentially expecting a child with his girlfriend, Melissa Jimenez, who is a sports journalist from Spain. So exciting if that's true for him at 44. Alonso might be a dad, and then his career probably would well and truly be over. But that probably still depends on how good the package is next year and how good Adrien Newey is at leading a team. So TBD on that too. That was a rumor. Just wanted to reiterate, that's not a confirmed fact of any kind. All right, lap 2, off-track F1. Carlos Sainz did a new commercial with L'Oreal when they were in Vegas, where he was like walking down a hotel suite in a black tie suit with like the cart, like the delivery cart for room service, and it had skincare underneath the food bowl cover thing. Wow, I should really know the words that I'm trying to use if I'm going to try to use them. Anyway, and that was really cute. I love that L'Oreal is really leaning into Carlos Sainz as a rep. I think I've bought more L'Oreal since Carlos got there, so it's working on me. Kimi in Qatar finally got his pink Lego glasses that all the podium finishers got in Las Vegas last week when they were in the pink Lego Cadillac car with the white chicks guy, Terry Crews. So they brought him his sunglasses since after those qualifications, he finished on the podium. George, by the way, got asked if he had any sympathy for the McLaren drivers after the double disqualification, and he just went, no. George also said his moment on the radio from earlier this season when he said there's a McLaren up my ass that everyone found hilarious. He was asked about it, and he was basically like, I think we should just go into everyone's workplace and find their most stressful, high pressure moment and shove a mic in their face. And honestly, fair play, George. I don't know who's complaining about that. I love seeing that side. I thought it was hilarious. We've never heard George swear on the radio, really. It's always some sort of made up pseudo swear word. I like seeing him swear. We did get a lot of Max content this week. There's a lot of Max quotes dropping left and right. Max said that he talks to Christian Horner almost every race weekend when Christian reaches out to him to debrief and ask questions and everything. I feel a bit bad for Christian. Only because that was his life for 20 years and now it's gone. So that must be a strange thing to come to terms with. Although I'm pretty sure someone's going to scoop him up. And he'll be back in F1 in no time because, as we all know, F1 really doesn't give a fuck what you do in your personal life. We've had Nazi cosplayers in F1. We've had whatever Bernie Eccleston is. We have fucking Flavio Briatore rocking up every week to the paddock as a team principal and consultant or whatever else he is for Alpine. So we are not shy. I'm not saying we. F1 is not shy to bring some people with questionable morals back into the fold. Let's just say that. An interview with Sebastian Vettel dropped last week where he talked about Max Verstappen, and I just thought his quote was really nice, so I'm just going to read it. I think the scary thing is that he's getting better. We know he's good, but he's still improving. He's still hungry. He's still willing to learn. I think he's working very hard behind the scenes as well, and that's what makes him so strong. And of course, he's blessed with a lot of talent on top of that. But even if he's one of the most talented drivers on the grid, I think ultimately what makes him so strong, it's always a combination, but the key ingredient is his head. I think in the situations where it matters most, he keeps his head, hardly ever makes a mistake, delivers when he needs to, feels the pressure, we all do, but he's able to find a space in his head where he's able to put that to a side and focus on what matters, which is incredible high praise from Sebastian Vettel. Obviously, me, the most important judge and critic, I do agree with everything Seb said, but I think there's another element to what makes Max so good. And it's that he said that in another interview, he said that even though his contract runs until 2028, whether he sticks around basically will depend on the new rules in 2026 and if they are nice and fun. And if they are not fun, then I don't really see myself hanging around. Winning 7 titles is not on my mind. I know that there are 3 more years after this one, so it could be possible, but it's not something I need to do before I leave the sport. I can leave the sport easily tomorrow. I have a lot of other passions, other racing categories. I want to spend more time with the family and live off my own schedule. And in my mind, I know if I close the chapter, it is closed. I do not see myself stopping and coming back. Once I stop, I really stop. And I think that's also, like, I know a lot of people say that part of a championship mentality is to just be laser focused on this, but I think part of what makes his mentality so strong is that while this is his passion and while he gives it all to this, his entire being doesn't hinge on this. And I think that makes for a very healthy mindset. He has other things he loves. His world will not be crushed if he doesn't win the world championship this year, or if he, I guess, never wins a world championship again. He loves racing, and he has a passion for racing, and he's committed to winning. Which is not to say, like, I know that seems counter, and they seem opposite of each other, but I think it really one complements the other, because I think being good, like part of what Seb said, he's good at separating those stressful moments. And I think part of what makes that easier for him is that he has other things he loves and is passionate about, and it won't destroy him. And I think that helps make him stronger without taking away from how committed he is to giving 150% every time he's on track. So there's a lot of things that I think make Max Verstappen strong, and I think a lot of those things are often misunderstood by others. There are currently multiple people I am working on converting into Max Verstappen fans. I think I can succeed because I do think he's wildly misunderstood. I think diehard Lewis Hamilton fans are going to be a lot harder to convert into Max enthusiasts, but I think he has a very polarizing personality, when in fact it really doesn't need to be. I think he's not what he comes off as. The big Max interview this week was about the current championship, and also I think this all came from the same interview, but this one particular quote ended up causing a bit of a back and forth between Max and Lando in the press. But what Max did say during this interview, when he was asked about the current championship and what he thinks of his position now, and it's like, is this like an incredible achievement? And he basically said that he is currently in this position as a contender for the drivers' championship due to other people's failures or mistakes. And if Red Bull had the same car as McLaren currently has, they would have secured the drivers' championship a long time ago. He was also asked if this will be the most important, like, how much this will mean to him if he becomes world champion for the 5th time. And he just went, well, 5 is better than 4. And he's like, but like, my world won't end. Like, it's fine if it's not. Like, the most important thing is that I gave 110% to be here. And he still cites Barcelona as his only mistake this season. And that is a good place to be, which he also said. Like, he was like, it's a good place to be where, like, we have nothing to lose. We gave it all we had. We don't have everything riding on this, which makes there's a lot less pressure. But of course, a lot of particularly the quote about we're here because of other people's mistakes, and like, if we had the same car, we would have been drivers' champions by now. That has been wildly misinterpreted as Max being really cocky and overconfident and just like really rude, and like the common tropes that people box Max Verstappen in. Box. And like, to me, when I heard that, he very clearly said he never compared himself to the drivers, because Max has always backed Lando as being able to win a world drivers champion. He's always said he's a championship material, that he has it in him, and that he's like convinced he will win a drivers championship in his career. He's also like praised Oscar quite highly. So I do not think he was talking about the drivers. He wasn't like saying, well, I'm a better driver than Oscar and Lando, so if I had their car, bam, 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 would have been done in no time. He is clearly very specifically talking about the team, because there have been, while you can pick apart the performances that Lando and Oscar have, and both have had better races and worse races, et cetera, at the end of the day, they've both been relatively well performing. They've both performed well, even their worst races, bar a couple of times. They've still finished in the top 5. I think Lando once finished in the top 7, but like, it doesn't matter. Like, my point is, they both, like, bar a few outliers, have performed pretty consistently and pretty well. The issue, and what Max is very clearly talking about, is the team. Red Bull has never played the two-man game. They have always favored, in Max's lifetime, in the era of Max Verstappen, they've always favored Max. They have always done everything they could to allow Max to maximize the car and prioritize him. And that's why they won the amount of championships they've won. That's been their approach. That's not McLaren's approach. And that's not to say that McLaren's approach is necessarily wrong. It's a lot more challenging. I don't think Red Bull would ever put themselves in a situation where someone's on par with Max Verstappen and they have to choose between the two drivers. They've never really had that. Maybe one race or another, they might have to choose. But overall, they've never really had to choose between two drivers. McLaren has chosen two pretty on par drivers who both perform really well. And then there's also the whole thing about how Oscar's manager, Mark Webber, given his own history in F1, most likely built into the contract that Oscar will not be D2 as long as he's in contention for the Drivers' Championship or something along those lines. With all of that in mind, McLaren is basically papaya rules or die. And that causes issues, especially when both drivers are performing so well that they're over like almost 400 points ahead in the Constructors' Championship. It's like last year, Max had secured the Drivers' Championship before they didn't secure the Constructors' Championship, but they secured the Drivers' Championship. They only had one car basically competing the way things were going last year. Before that, also I don't know the stats. I'm sure there are stats. How often a team has been so beyond ahead in the Constructors' Championship and still to the very last minute fighting for the Drivers' Championship. Like, I don't think that happens particularly often especially when both drivers are like less than a race win away from each other in winning the Drivers' Championship. It's just like not been done. And I think that's what Max was talking about. Like very clear, like the way they're managing the team, like our team would never manage things like that. That's just like, we would never make the strategy calls they make. We would never make the inner team workings calls that they make. Like that's just like not how they operate. I don't know how this was presented to Lando because he responded to the comments Max Verstappen made, and I didn't hear the way the question was phrased. It's very easily, Max could have been paraphrased, and like they were like, so what do you think of Max saying that he could already win the Drivers' Championship if he was in your car? Which is not really what Max Verstappen was saying, but Lando basically responded to that. And he said, Max is very welcome to say everything he wants. To be honest, he's kind of earned the right. You know, he's won 4 world championships. I have a lot of respect, and I think that gives anyone a lot of credit. He's achieved an incredible amount, more than anyone generally dreams of achieving. So, you know, Max generally has a good clue about a lot of things. But there are a lot of things he doesn't have much of a clue about. It's also Red Bull's way of going about things, this kind of aggressive nature, and yet just talking nonsense a lot of the time. So it depends if you want to listen to it and talk about it like you love to, or you do what we do as a team, which is kind of keep our heads down, keep focused. Maybe he would have done, but he hasn't so far, and he keeps trying. To which Max responded, he doesn't talk nonsense, he just talks facts. Which is a very Max response, and it was also a very Lando response. Again, depending on how the question was phrased to him, how the quote was presented to him, that could have been a very reasonable response. To say that McLaren just keeps their head down and like stays focused, I mean, come on, he's always chatting shit in the media and then being like, what, how'd you interpret it like that? I'm not saying the media doesn't misconstrue his words or misconstrue certain statements to get a reaction from him. They 100% do. The media is equally liable, but there's only so many times you can take quotes out of context for Lando Norris before it's like, maybe you should be more careful with your words. Anyway, that's that with the whole Max situation. I do agree. I think most people actually agree that if Red Bull had the car that McLaren has this year, Red Bull would have won the Drivers' and the Constructors' Championship this year already. Way beyond this time, actually. And it's McLaren's commitment to the papaya rules and to being fair and to wonky strategy calls, as we have seen today, that have put them in this situation. There is no world where they should still be fighting for the Drivers' Championship, even amongst themselves, at this point. Because halfway through the season, Oscar was leading by such an insurmountable amount, they could have backed him. Then Lando picked up his performance, and he was performing so well with the season coming to a close. They could have backed Lando, but they don't back either. But like, they're not doing it in a way that's conducive to either driver. I think they're hurting both drivers. Do I think they're hurting Lando a little less than they're hurting Oscar? Yes, but that might be my bias shining through. And just like anyone can interpret anything in the way they want. That's probably not what's happening. To me, it sort of seems like things have fallen more. I don't know. I really don't think it's an active thing, but we'll get to it in a second. All right. Lap 3, trackside at Qatar. There were pictures circulating around from the latest meeting between the drivers and the FIA. Everyone looked incredibly displeased and like they wanted to be anywhere else. The drivers looked uncomfortable, grumpy, annoyed. I believe they're talking a lot about the rules and regulations. The one in particular was probably the Oscar incident in Brazil when he got the 10-second penalty. I know that both George and Carlos, as the presidents of whatever their little club is, were, what's it called? The Drivers Federation, whatever, the Drivers Association of Driving. They have both been preaching that they don't think we should have volunteer stews anymore, with which I wholeheartedly agree. I don't think any other sports have volunteer referees for the highest level of competition other than F1. Like, I think lower competitions for sure. But the highest level of motorsport ever has volunteer referees is a little crazy. I think they're reimbursed in some capacity, or like, I don't think they're fully volunteer, but I think some get paid, some get reimbursed in some way. The marshals are volunteers. The stews, I think, just aren't full-time employees. And I think that's what Carlos and George are arguing for. Carlos has made some calls for former drivers, particularly the ones who do the analysis for Sky and for F1. So I think he said Karim Chandok, and he mentioned a couple of others that he think would be really good as stewards because they really understand the sport and how calls should be made. And he just thinks that's what we need in order to have more consistency in terms of rulings, which I think is totally fair. But yeah, no, everyone looked miserable. They used to video and stream these meetings, and I really wish they still did that. They really take away all the fun. They took away those before I even started watching. They took away the team to race director radio calls, which was the greatest experience of everyone's life and really took 2021 to a whole other level. No, Mikey, no, it's not right. Anyway, moving on. Djokovic was there. He led a little warm-up session on the track, which I think was for various personnel, including engineers, mechanics, other team members, and then Franco Colapinto joined in, and it was amusing. I don't know why Djokovic was leading a warm-up session on the grid, but he was. He also apparently massively supports Lando, which I actually find interesting because given all of everything we know about Djokovic's mentality and how he approaches the sport and how he's anal about his diet, his training. He's like very like OTT. I'm surprised Lando was his driver of choice because they just seem to have very different vibes. But that was his driver of choice, and he's rooting for Lando to go to the end. And also, Djokovic has a much more similar reputation within the tennis world to Max. So I'm surprised he didn't find like parallels with Max Verstappen more so than Lando, but I hope. The most cruel thing I think that happened was the pre-race press conferences. They put Carlos and Lewis together, and half of the questions were about a recap of the season, and they were like, so Carlos, how does it feel to have such an amazing season at Williams? And then they went to Lewis and they're like, so Lewis, how does it feel to suck? It truly nothing better. I think this move, while it was so sad to see Carlos essentially fired and moving to a low-tier team, feeling like it was such a huge demotion that he would never see a podium again, and like it felt so unfair. Like, I feel like Carlos is thriving at Williams. He has a great team. He has a great teammate. I think he was born to take a team and build it up. He's got the mentality for it, and he's got the brain for it, like the way he approaches racing. And I think it's great for Williams, and it's great for him. And I think this move to Ferrari was one of the most horrible decisions Lewis could have made. I understand he was deeply unhappy at Mercedes, and I understand all drivers want a chance to drive in red. But it's just gone so badly, and it's so sad to watch. It's so sad to watch, like, Lewis being just like, he seemed sad and confused and frustrated the last 2 years. That does not compare to him at Ferrari. He is broken. Ferrari has broken Lewis Hamilton. And I'm praying that next year is better, but like, and like the new regulations and like all of that, all the new rules are like more suitable to Lewis and more suitable to Ferrari, and that we'll start to see, like, to not even get a podium this year is wild behavior. Like, it's so unfair. He's being let down by Ferrari, and he just seems to be like spinning his wheels, no pun intended. Like he just doesn't know what to do. It feels like there's no solution, and I think he just can't wait for the season to be over, and I feel bad for him. I do think that he's being a great sport about it, all things considered. He did congratulate, I think I saw a video of him congratulating Carlos in the media pen after the race today for his podium finish. So I'm sure there was some element of feeling kind of bad for like ousting Carlos out of his seat. Not like sorry, but like bad that his move cost a driver a seat, a driver that didn't deserve to lose a seat. So it probably does, on one hand, feel good to see Carlos not miserable, but it also probably sucks to see Carlos thriving while he's miserable. All right, a little bit on the celebs. Kevin Hart was there. Apparently, I think he has like a like Beckham, who was also there. They both have like some sort of brand deal with Qatar. I like how Brundle just like enters this conversation. He's like, "So, you're a very funny man. Thoughts on F1?" Kevin Hart did pronounce Alpine, which I don't know why everyone keeps doing that, but I found that quite funny. And he waved the checkered flag, so that was fun. Maya Jama was there. She completely lost her voice. If you don't know who she is, she hosts Love Island UK, and looking stunning as always. And that's when I learned that you're not allowed to wear heels or open-toe shoes on the grid. That was interesting. I had no idea. Gordon Ramsay was there. Brundle referred to Gordon Ramsay as his comfort blanket. Gordon does love F1. He is rooting for Lando, understandably. British driver, we need a British winner, blah, 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 blah. Oh my God, last week when the commentators, I think it was Jensen Button and Crofty, just were going on about how excited they were to have another winner from Somerset. Yay! Another world champion that will be from Somerset. We have one from Lewisham. Is that where Lewis is from? That doesn't sound right. But two will be from Somerset. Jensen Button and soon to be Lando Norris. They were very excited about it. Anyway, that's it for the digital warm-up. On to analysis. So I'm just going to do a really quick summary on sprint because I really just want to get into what happened during the race and what that means and yada, yada, yada. So quick summary on the sprint. Qatar sprint just sucks as much as everyone expected it to suck because the Qatar track sucks. It almost sucks. It sucks, I think, as much, if not more than Monaco, because at least Monaco has some vibes and history, and Qatar just sucks. And the weird part is that it's not a street circuit, so they have the ability to improve the track and make it better and like do all the things that drivers want to see from the track because they have the space and the opportunity and all of this stuff, but they're not doing it. And I don't know why, because it stinks. But basically where you started is where you finish. Oscar got pole and then finished first for the sprint, which seemed like a really positive upswing in momentum for him in terms of the championship, particularly with his recent dip in performance. But alas, well, no, his performance lasted. It wasn't his fault. We'll talk. Quick note on quali. Gabby qualified 14th, but he will start 19th due to a 5-place grid penalty for an incident in Vegas. And Franco, I believe, is starting from the pit lane. Max will be starting P3, and when he was asked if it was going to be annoying to start from P3, he said, not for me, but it'll probably be annoying for everyone around me because I've got nothing to lose, which he keeps saying. There was a quite lolsy spat between George and Lando in the media pen post-quali. George had walked up and was doing an interview near Lando, and then he tapped Lando and he's like, why are you saying that I ruined your quali? Why are you blaming me? And Lando was like, who told you that? And George was like, they told me over there. And Lando was like, well, why are you listening to the media? I can't believe you believe them over me. And he looks visibly annoyed. He looks quite upset about this. And I think George entered the conversation mostly joking. And George just went, well, it does sound like something you would say. And then started joking how you give Lando. He's like, I was trying to give you a tell so you could win this championship. But Lando clearly has concerns with how the media twists what he says, which they do, how they twist what other people say in order to get certain answers. We just talked about this. This is all true. Do I still think that George is probably right? And it does sound like something Lando would say. Yes. I don't know if he said it because I haven't been able to find the interview where this allegedly all happened, or I don't know if George was told on the record or what. But Lando's gripe with the media is entirely fair, but he still tends to say bratty things in the media that are not taken out of context. He might not be given enough context when he responds at all times, but sometimes he could do with not talking or talking less. But he was really upset. He looked so done with the media and was so annoyed. But Lando was just not in a kidding mood. And George tried to salvage the situation. But it was quite entertaining that we got this all caught on camera and we watched this interaction between the two of them. But yeah, Lando's pretty much done with media. So the starting grid is as follows: Oscar, Lando, Max, George, Kimi, Isaac, Carlos, Fernando, Pierre, Charles, Nico, Liam, Ollie, Alex, Yuki, Esteban, Lewis, Lance, Gabby, and Nico. Okay, so on to the race. So at the start, Oscar managed to hold on to the lead. Again, his performance was never the issue this weekend. He performed top tier from beginning to end. Max immediately overtakes Lando into second. For a minute, Lando was hot on his wheels, but Max pretty much holds on to second and is chasing after Oscar. Meanwhile, George somehow from fourth dropped down to seventh, and Kimi's in fourth now. I don't really know how that happened. But anyway, after the start, by a miracle of all miracles, there is a safety car in lap 7 caused by contact between Nico and Pierre, who ended up getting a puncture, but it forced Nico off track and into the gravel. There was debris everywhere, and basically Nico's race was done. And it issued a safety car. Now, the reason this is a miracle of all miracles is because the timing of the safety car is kind of perfect, because per an agreement reached by the FIA and F1, each tire is only allowed a 25 lap stint, which means that because this is a 57 lap race, this requires 2 stops within this race, which means that with a safety car in lap 7, we have a free pit stop, and that leaves 50 laps where everyone can comfortably pit just one more time, right in the middle. Now, this is also showing how even more boring Qatar could have been, because now everyone's going to pit at the exact same time every time, sort of like what happened in Monaco, or so we thought, because the first person to pit is Max Verstappen, which triggers an influx of cars pitting. Basically, every car on track pits. except for Ocon, who did end up pitting the last lap before the safety car ended, and the McLarens. Because you see, as McLaren told us after the race, they didn't know everyone was going to pit at that time. So they decided to keep track position because they just couldn't be sure if everyone was going to pit. Except like I knew, me, a dumbass from America who found out about F1 like 10 minutes ago. That's a joke. It's been more than 10 minutes. Knew that in fact, everyone was going to pit during the safety car because it's literally a free pit stop at literally the perfect time. Why wouldn't anyone pit? But McLaren just like didn't have the foggiest what everyone else might do. So as soon as it became clear that literally everyone with a brain was pitting at that exact time, Lando got on the radio and was like, shouldn't we pit? Like, shouldn't we be following Max into the pit lane? And his engineer was like, well, Max has just like lost all flexibility for the remainder of this race, and this is gonna suck for them. Like, what do you mean he's lost all flexibility? Like, maybe he would have lost flexibility if another safety car was issued at like a very inopportune time, causing the McLarens to pit at that safety car, giving them fresher tires than Max before Max needed to pit. But all that's like an if. And more importantly, none of that happened. Like, the magnitude of this mistake, guys, is so outrageous. It is so insane for a team that has won the Constructors' Championship twice in a row. At this point, a team, in theory, of this caliber, fighting with two excellent drivers in the Drivers' Championship at this stage of the competition, with one race left to go, with one of their drivers leading the race and one of their other drivers catching up, to make this big of a mistake is insane, especially when the answer, the correct thing to do, was being spelled out for them over the entire course of the safety car. Anyway, why they did this is still not entirely clear. They say they didn't know everyone would pit and they just made a mistake. Like, they very clearly, like, PR team clearly said, just say you made a mistake. So Zach and Andrea Stella are just like, we made a mistake. This was just a mistake and we are sorry. But I guess that's a plausible scenario. And I guess they really truly could have just fumbled the strategy. There's also the possibility that people have floated around that it's because of Papaya rules and McLaren didn't want to split strategy between their drivers, which hasn't always stopped them before, but it's never gone well. But like, so they could have pitted both drivers like every other team did, which probably would have resulted in the best possible finish for them had they just done that, or at least a chance to fight for P1, P2. They could have pitted one and not the other, but then the PR nightmare if they pitted one and their race went monumentally better than the other one, and that would have been a catastrophic press situation for them. So I guess I kind of believe that it wasn't a matter of fairness for them, and they truly believe that maintaining track position at this time was better than a free pit stop for both drivers. But like, why would you think that? You are a championship winning team. You should not think something that stupid. Why are you thinking that? Also, now at this point in the race, everyone knows that McLaren is going to pit in lap 25, which means Max knows he needs to push the crap out of his car to minimize the gap between him and the two McLarens in front of him as much as possible. So when that time comes, he pounces ahead. And then come the McLaren pit stops. So Oscar pitted in lap 25, Lando in lap 26, narrowly both escaping the DRS train. They still got like a shot, I guess, even though Oscar's pit stop was a little slow, but they're still like in a good position. We're only 25 laps in. We can see what happens. But then comes the second pit stop. And the second pit stop came about, Oscar pitted first because he was on the radio petitioning for an earlier pit stop because he was trying to anticipate chasing Max down. So it was like he ended up pitting in lap 42. And from what it sounded like based on this argument, he wanted to go on softs because they kept saying you would have to be at this speed in order to have a chance, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, can you do it? And Oscar was like, well, it's better than what's going on now. So like, I'll give it a shot. And he finally convinced them. He goes into the pit lane and they put on hards for him. Why? There's like 15 laps left. Why have you put him on he was leading the race at this point. Why have you put him on hards? Por qué? Someone explain. Like, I just don't understand why that's a decision they made. When his whole goal was to chase Max down. I know like Qatar is really rough on tires and they like disintegrate quite quickly on this track, but like, guys, he's leading the race and you put him on hards. There must, and they had softs available. So there must be something I'm not understanding. But I just like, why have you put him on hards? He did have a 1.81 pit stop, which is super fast. I don't think it's the record, but it's super fast. But I do think that the tire choice was like the final nail on the coffin because he basically had no shot of getting anything but second beyond that after that point. Lando's second pit stop was around lap 47 and it was a bit slow, but he did come out right ahead of the DRS train, like right ahead, but he was behind Carlos and Kimi, putting him in fifth. Right? No. Right? Yes. I think he was in fifth. Yeah. So he had 2 overtakes to make if he wanted to get on the podium and at least one to ensure him being in the best position possible heading into Abu Dhabi. So finishing anything but fifth would be ideal for Lando in this situation. So with 12 laps left to go, Lando's pit stop. So with 12 laps left to go after Lando's pit stop, he's chasing down Kimi and Carlos, and he's so close to Kimi. Like there was a couple of times where he almost overtook Kimi, but Kimi was just doing an absolute masterclass of defense driving. Like he was defending so well, and he's defending so well. While he's defending, you can hear Carlos on the radio getting like more and more excited, realizing what position they were in. And I think he just like decided to keep the radio on indefinitely. Like I think he just turned the button on and was like, I'm not turning this off. I'm just going to tell them everything I think. Cause like it started with him like going on the radio and be like, I think Lando will struggle to pass Kimi. And then he goes back on the radio and he goes, we need to build the gap to Norris right now. We've got to build it. And like, just like watching this progression of him realizing, oh my God, I could literally be on the podium. I could actually be on the podium. Kimi's defending really well. Lando's not as fast as we all thought he'd be. So, oh my God, I could be on the podium. This could win. This could work. So he's like fully taken over strategy for himself. And I think this is once again like an unintentional job interview for like a future team principal position as he manages the strategy of his own car and is actively keeping track of the 2 cars behind him. And he's just like in this flow state. And I just like love this for him. Like this is peak Carlos behavior and I'm obsessed. And Kimi is flying, by the way. Like literally I'm shouting at my screen, you go, Glen Coco. You go. I did not breathe this entire race. Like, I don't remember the last time this was such a nail biter. I could barely breathe. Didn't know who was going to win this race. Didn't know what that meant for the championship. There was just like so much on the line, so much up in the air. There's still, all of that is still true. And it's just like, for such a boring race to be so stressed the entire time is quite impressive. But anyway, it looked like Kimi was so close to finishing fourth. And then like right towards the end of the second to last lap, right before they entered the last lap, he lost the rear and went off track a bit. And Lando just like zoomed through and was ahead. It did look, I will say, not excusing anything that followed this, but it did look like he just kind of let him through, which is not what happened. He did not let Lando through. He made a mistake and there was an issue and he went off track and Lando squeezed through and that's just what happened. But GP got on the radio to Max and said, not sure what happened to Antonelli. It looked like he just pulled over and let Norris through, which I don't want to like fully blame GP because he's just communicating with his driver. He's letting him know like championship wise, what's up. I don't think he was fully blaming Kimi. He's like, it literally just looked like he just like let him through. But that comment, and to be fair, it did look like it on the television, but that comment like really exacerbated a lot of people who just started like raining hate down on Kimi for like ruining things for Max and for like just like standing aside, and like how could he, like he was getting such violent messages that F1 issued a statement, Red Bull issued a statement, like Toto was doing an interview after and he's like, anyone who thinks that Kimi just stepped aside is an idiot. Like this, like it's just so dumb. Kimi hasn't posted on social media since. Like, I feel so bad for him. Like, who is hating on an 18-year-old kid? Leave him alone. 19, whatever. He's a teenager. Leave him alone. And he's so cute. And by the way, Kimi worships the ground Max walks on. Like, there is no way he stepped aside to let Max's rival score extra points. Like, that's just like not what happened and not something Kimi would ever do. Kimi's like Max Verstappen through and through. It's just not happening. And like, even if he wasn't obsessed with Max, like it's insinuating that sucks and people suck. And I don't know why they're bullying a child. Leave Kimi alone. He had a great race, made a small mistake. And now he's being accused of like ruining his hero's chance at a driver's championship. Please leave Kimi alone. The end result was Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri, Carlos Sainz, and Lando Norris, and then Kimi. But the vibe after was a little bit all over the place. Oscar, for his part, was clearly so gutted and heartbroken. On the radio, while his engineer was like piling on the praise, Oscar just went, I'm speechless. I'm absolutely speechless, which for a man of very few words to say that he's speechless is rough. Like he is really dejected. Like he just lost second place in the driver's championship and he literally has to pray for a miracle of epic proportions to like grip Abu Dhabi for him to win, because he needs something to happen to Max and Lando for him to somehow win this. That's a tall fucking order, man. Like, I don't know how that's going to happen. And Oscar knows it, and like, I don't know, my heart just breaks for him, because this is once again demonstrating why he has no faith in his team and the real reason I think his performance has been down, which, by the way, I really do think part of it is like the track type. I think maybe the performance upgrade that he didn't end up taking, plus his own strengths, favor basically any tracks besides the last 4 tracks we've seen. Not sure what the technical breakdown is of that. Like, if those tracks are technically one thing versus the ones that he's better at, but like, I'm reading it as a North American curse on Oscar Piastri. Don't perform well there unless it's Miami. So my expert opinion is, which curse, question mark? Whatever it is, his performance is back to what we came to like expect from Oscar. This weekend was flawless up until these insane strategy calls from McLaren. But like his performance specifically, it's like night and day. It's like just very odd. But we've also like watched Oscar break this season. Like, I think this was his last straw in terms of his team. Like, even though it's not always been like a intentional thing or a conscious thing, he does get screwed over by his team quite a bit, which sucks. But I can't even say like this approach benefited Lando more, because will anyone say that Lando was a winner today? Like, the only argument that conspiracy theorists might have is just that like McLaren decided that if Lando can't have a good race, neither can Oscar. But that's like a pretty big jump. Like, do I think Zach Brown favors Lando? 100%. Do I think that maybe that creeps its way in quite subtle ways, like, and shows across the team? Yeah, I do think so. But do I think that the team is actively thinking this and consciously operating on a bias towards Lando? Not really. I don't really think that's happening. I do believe McLaren believes they're doing everything in their power to give their drivers equal chance. But like, what else are they supposed to do? They have 2 fantastic drivers. Red Bull would have never put themselves in a situation like we talked about in the digital warm-up. Like they like would not put themselves in a position to have such an equal playing field because they have a formula that they know works, which is prioritize your best driver. Especially when that driver's Max Verstappen. Also, by the way, McLaren really knows they fucked up because I forgot who it was in the broadcast, but they basically said usually everyone exits the garage/pit wall and goes straight to like the media pen or to park firm if their drivers are on the podium. And Zach Brown and Andrea Stella had headed straight for hospitality, which meant there was like serious PR training happening. Like they were regrouping and deciding what they were saying to the media. Oscar, of course, like did not have time to join that meeting, and he went straight to Park Firm where he gave one of the saddest interviews I've ever seen in my life. Brundle immediately was like asking him about the strategy and what he thought and how he felt, and he was doing his very best to like not throw the team under the bus, and it does help when he speaks few words, so it was more by his face than anything else. I don't think he said anything that bad. Just that he was disappointed in the results of that day. I mean, he feels like he gave it us all absolute best, I think, and it doesn't show. And then, meanwhile, Brundle is like talking to Max, and he's like, "So, what do you think of this strategy?" And Max is doing his very best to like give like PR-y answers. Like he called the strategy interesting, and like it's just so awkward that this is happening with Oscar standing literally right next to him. But like as Max is trying to really be polite and be like, I just thought that some of the strategies were interesting. I just kept hearing his quote from that one segment from last week where he reads comments online. I just kept hearing his voice going, "Sir or ma'am, you are an idiot." Because that's what it sounded like he thought McLaren was. He obviously doesn't think it's Oscar's fault. He thinks McLaren's an idiot, and McLaren is an idiot. He would be correct. And then meanwhile, there's like Carlos, who is such a little showgirl having the time of his freaking life. Brundle was like, "How great does it feel to be on the podium again?" And the crowd is cheering for him. And Carlos responds with, "Oh, sorry, what? I can't hear you above all this noise and adoration for me." That was not a direct quote, but like that's what it felt like. He's like, "Oh, what? It's just like so loud. I can't hear what you're saying." He is beloved, especially when he scores these results, which is not expected in a Williams. And the cool down room was so awkward because like Oscar is clearly upset. Everyone knows why Oscar is upset, and everyone probably agrees with why he's upset. Max is sort of the reason Oscar is like upset, but like just circumstantially, it's not actually Max's fault. So that's a bit awkward because he's like not sorry that he won, but I'm sure he feels like a certain type of way. Like I'm sure he feels kind of bad that Oscar's in this position. Like acknowledging that sucks. It does suck. It's not his fault, but it sucks. And Carlos, meanwhile, is like flying on a high of getting a second podium for Williams. And after he spent so long saying no podiums, no points, this is a throwaway year. Don't expect anything. He's had a really good year, and he promises a terrible year. So liar. And he's just like on this high, and he's so excited, and like I don't know, it was a lot. Then the podium was just heartbreaking to see. When Oscar got his trophy, he literally so half-heartedly lifted up in the air and gave like a closed mouth grimace, and I just felt so bad for him. It looked like someone compared it to like getting a shitty gift for Christmas from like someone you don't really like, and you're like, amazing, thank you so much. Meanwhile, Carlos hoisted that P3 trophy as far as it would go, like, and the whole Williams garage cheered for him. Also, I don't know if like it was just the broadcast that showed like two people that showed up from McLaren, or if they actually weren't there and they were all at this PR meeting. But it was depressing as fuck that like it looked like two people showed up for Oscar. Also, I do want to shout out Hannah Spritz, who is the principal strategy engineer from Red Bull, who made the key call, pitting lap 7, which I know like I've already seen some people dismiss it as like, well, everyone made that call except for McLaren, so isn't that impressive? Like, yeah, it's impressive because like she was saying before the race, they had like discussed the possible scenarios, and it talked that the time for for safety cars opens around lap 7. And when it actually came during lap 7, it was like a gift from the heavens. And she was like, yes, we're pitting immediately. And so that's why Max came in first. And then everyone else started pitting. She's like, it seems like everyone had the same idea as us. But then like McLaren's not pitting. So everyone in the pit wall is like, are you sure you want to pit? Maybe we shouldn't pit. Are you sure? Are you sure? And she was like, yeah, I'm sure. We're pitting. And they pitted and they won. So bless up Hannah Schmitz, icon, legend, doing things for women in the F1 world that we all can only dream of. So go her. And I did love seeing Max like douse her in champagne. And then he turned around and tried to douse Oscar in champagne because, you know, Oscar's a bit down. The weirdest thing I think is, so Kim Illman, who's a photographer, described a scene where Zach Brown exited the hospitality after the race, beeline for the media pen where Oscar was giving interviews, walked straight up to Oscar, hugged him, clearly whispered something, and then walked right back to hospitality, which apparently is not the norm at all. He's usually in the media pen or doing interviews elsewhere. And that was clearly his intent of leaving the hospitality. Clearly the intent was to do it in front of the cameras. And then like Oscar was asked like, oh, what did Zach Brown say to you? He's like, oh, he just said sorry. But the hug looked so awkward. It was giving Voldemort hugging Draco Malfoy in the last movie when Draco was like called over from the side of the students and had to walk over to his parents. And then like Voldemort tried to hug him and it was the most awkward, horrible hug ever. That's what it looked like when Zach Brown attempted to hug Oscar, and Oscar just like stood there letting him hug him. It was clearly all for the cameras. It was clearly just for the press to show that they are supportive of Oscar and that they're a whole team and yada, yada, yada. But like, it just looked dumb. It just looked stupid. And it was just like, oh, I hate it. I hate that Zach Brown calls out other like Red Bull's PR stunts or whatever. I think his are so much cringier and worse. Like, I hate it. But I honestly think at this point, anything Zach Brown does is going to annoy me. I don't think he can win in my eyes. So whatever. The results. So the driver of the day was Max Verstappen officially. And I do think he had a great drive. And I do think overall, he was the driver of the day, definitely driver of the moment. But I do think the driver of the day today was Carlos Sainz, if we look at this race as a standalone situation. If we look in the context of the championship, yeah, Max's driver of the day. But Carlos Sainz drove a fantastic race, maximized on issues outside of his control, but also he won on pace and merit. Like, that was a killer drive from him, killer performance, killer strategizing, like everything. I think he deserved driver of the day, which is not taking away from Max's performance. Dick in the box. I mean, McLaren's strategy was just so fucking tragic. It's just embarrassing to even... I would have probably run away. I would not want to do media duties after calling that and then having to go and explain yourself. Like, it's so fucking dumb. And they ruined things for both of their drivers. They ruined things for Lando because he's leading the championship. They ruined things for Oscar because he had an opportunity to regain more momentum in the championship. Like, if he had won and Lando finished 5th, imagine what that meant for next week. And I think would have Max been out? I don't know if he would have been out, but it would have done a lot. And they screwed them both over deeply. And they suck. And they really need to rally as a team and do better because it's embarrassing. The race results are as follows. Max, Oscar, Carlos, Lando, Kimi, George, Fernando, Charles, Liam, Yuki, Alex, Lewis, Gabby, Franco, Esteban, Pierre, Lance, Isaac, Ollie, and Nico. The Drivers' Championship has Lando with 408 points, Max with 396, and Oscar with 392. So Max is 12 points away from Lando. Oscar is 16 points away from Lando. I cannot believe we have one race left and it's literally all still to play for. By the way, McLaren has a 341 point lead in the Constructors' Championship. Like, they've already secured it. Obviously, they won, but like, they're 341 points ahead of the next team, which just like shows how insane it is that they still have not secured the Drivers' Championship. Going down to the wire is crazy. when you have that kind of a lead in the constructors. It's just crazy. So I guess this nail biter is continuing to next week. I can't believe for a season with like quite a few mid races, this is coming down to the very last moment. And I love it. It's really giving us, like, I don't think I've experienced beyond 2021. I've never experienced as a full-time F1 viewer what it's like to not know how a championship is going to end at the last race. So that's really exciting for me and exciting for anyone else who has yet to experience that or hasn't experienced that in many years. I think we're all in for quite a treat. I think for me, I don't think I want either McLaren to win. I think I want Max to win, because I think if one of the McLarens win over the other at this point, it's just going to be heart-wrenching and soul-destroying for the other one. Like, it's going to be a rough hill to overcome and come back to face another day next year. So I kind of hope that they both came close, that Max wins this one, and then next year the team is better able to support two contenders for the Drivers' Championship. That's just me. Anyways, see you guys soon in Abu Dhabi. Until then, Box.